To date, this hasn't truly been recreated in a cinema. Your living room, car, or mobile device. We set out to change this. DTS-X immerses you in multi-dimensional sound like you've never heard before, where subtle ambiance to intense action truly envelop you. Experience DTS-X. Sound unbound.
I'm gonna go now, okay? Do not show up tonight. Stop talking. Start fucking listening and do it from home.
Who leaked this to the Times?
Stop talking, Mitch.
And who did you have to blow to keep your job? All right. See you in a couple of hours.
I need this. I need my makeup so I can look like a princess all night. For the fit, I need my mitts, I need my phone, and I need my eye drops. None of which fit in this teeny little thing.
I can take your phone.
No, why? Why would you take my phone? That's ridiculous, Jason.
Well, you're just getting worked up about nothing.
Oh, really? About nothing? I'm sorry. I need all this stupid
Right,
shit.
Alex, it's fine. Let me just...
I said I would get it. I can shut it. Thank you.
Mom,
What?
it's gonna be okay.
No, it's not, honey.
Look, it's just an event.
Really, just an event? Only with the worst timing ever. I'd rather stick daggers into my eyeballs.
Alex.
What?
Alex. How about you pretend to have food poisoning and just don't go?
I cannot do that. Everyone in there will know that I'm lying, know that I'm uncomfortable and afraid. That I'm afraid of what's gonna happen to me on the show in the wake of Mitch. Everyone in there is press. They think they know everything. Half of them hate me because I'm too successful, and the other half hate me just because, I don't know, their hearts are at home in a fucking jar. Oh, God. Oh, Jesus, I can't cry. Jesus. God. No, stop it.
Mom.
Yeah, well, you can't go out like this.
I know that!
Okay,
Yep.
let's go do this fucking event so I can go home and just die.
Hey, Alec. Congratulations on being honored tonight.
Thank you.
How does it feel?
Oh, it's so meaningful to be honored by such prestigious company. And I'm just thrilled to be here to support quality journalism in this day and age.
I've been dreaming of doing a trip through South America for years.
This episode of Waveform is brought to you by Monday.com. Countless emails, endless video meetings, lost documents. You know, as much as I love technology, sometimes it feels like tech is working overtime against us. Monday.com is getting it back on your side by bringing everything together to streamline your workflows and keep your team in sync with one easy-to-use platform. We're officially in Techtober now, and the tech world is really heated up, and we're producing more content than ever before. Monday.com brings teams together so you can plan, manage, and track everything your team is working on in one centralized place. So if you want your team to be more effective than ever, visit Monday.com for your 2-week free trial. This episode of Waveform is brought to you by AT&T. 5G from AT&T is fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. So should you switch? Well, historically, those were reasons why new tech was adopted. Neanderthals saw that fire heated things fast and made their caves secure from rampaging woolly mammoths. The ancient Romans saw that aqueducts were reliable and fast ways to transport water, and they stopped carrying water jugs on their backs and adopted them nationwide. So today is no different. Switching to AT&T 5G is kind of a no-brainer. AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires a compatible plan. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Waveform Podcast. Fun fact, it's episode 24 of the year. We're your hosts. I'm Marquez Brownlee.
And I'm Andrew Manganelli.
And today with us, we actually have 2 more guests, both from Main Gear. Now, we'll talk more about Main Gear in a second, but we'll have our little introductions. Ron and Wallace from Main Gear, thanks for joining us. And I don't know, how do you want to introduce yourselves as the 2 most influential people at Main Gear, and what does Main Gear do? Give us a little breakdown intro.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
It's a great pleasure. And I'm Wallace, CEO and founder for Main Gear. I started the business when I was 18 years old, actually down the street from you.
Yeah.
Right here in Newark.
New Jersey roots, yeah.
Yeah. But today we're considered essentially it's one of the premier boutique system builders in the world, actually. So we're strategic partners with NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, pretty much all the silicon manufacturers in the world. Yep.
Yeah, and so Ron, and I'm the marketing director here at Main Gear. Lifelong gamer, right? So started gaming when I was in kindergarten, and just it's been a passion my whole life. And same thing with PCs. I've been in the PC space for, I think at this point, over 15 years, and I've been with Main Gear for over 8. So
wow, it's been that long. Huh?
Yeah, it's been that long, which is awesome. And like honestly, I'm passionate about everything surrounding this, and so like it's getting to do what you love is just amazing. And so it's really, really, really awesome experience.
So when he says we're passionate, he means that we like have really in-depth discussions about every single thing that we do.
It's perfect. It's kind of like when you're working in a video studio like we are here. We're in the background having all kinds of conversations about what are good videos and like what makes a good video. So I imagine the conversations behind the scenes at Main Gear are like, I wish this card would do this, or it'd be great if they had these CPUs that would actually fit with this, blah blah blah. And like that's a conversation we don't have as much, but I think it's really interesting.
Yeah,
I think it comes up here once in a while when big new pieces of hardware come out that capture a lot of attention, like the new NVIDIA cards that we're seeing with this new generation now. We just did a video on 8K gaming on the RTX 3090, and it was made possible by you guys because we had a Main Gear PC, and we had the card, and we had this whole build around it, and then we had 8K gaming happen. I think that's a lot of conversations happen in the studio, like, wow, 8K gaming. We can't really do that on these consoles that are also coming out this year. I'll ask you guys, what do you think of this world of PC gaming with 8K gaming and ray tracing and high resolution, high frame rate, and all this fun stuff versus the new console generation we're seeing come out around the same time. You guys talk about that?
Yeah. So there's always that conversation that takes place when a new console gets announced that PC gaming is dead, right? And companies like AMD and NVIDIA, they always have a card in their pocket just waiting to drop it, right? Like,
yeah, the timing seemed really good. Like, there's so much PS5 and Xbox like talk, and then all of a sudden NVIDIA just comes out with this and just has been dominating the.
So you think
the news
they
cycle.
sort of held that in mind, where this big leap was nicely coincided with around when the consoles are starting to get info?
I'm not gonna say they purposely aligned it because I really don't know, right? But maybe just the stars aligned. But it's I doubt that a company like NVIDIA would just sit on the sidelines and wait for consoles to just eat into technically their market share of PC gaming GPUs, right? So that's the beauty of the PC architecture, the platform, right? It's always ahead. It's always up to date. So consoles, you're basically getting the latest and greatest. When is the new Xbox and PlayStation coming out? November, I think.
Yeah, like a month or two.
A month or two.
Very soon.
If you can get one.
Yeah, if you can get. I couldn't pre-order, by the way.
Yeah.
But like you'll get the latest and greatest then. But the PC is going to be updated. In 3 months, in 6 months, or whatever. So we'll always be ahead.
Yeah, I think the modular part of it always spoke to me. So I built PCs in the past, and that was always the question as well. If you get something like a console, that'll be the same for the next however many years until it's slowly starting to, reach its limit and the next generation of games is around the corner, then you have to upgrade everything at once. Versus a PC where you're like, you know what? I think my GPU needs have outgrown this machine. I'm going to upgrade just the GPU, and I'll get what I need from that. And there's a bunch of advantages and disadvantages with cost and space and all that stuff, but that's the part I liked about it.
Although, let's be real, every time you're ready to upgrade your GPU, then you're like, to get the full potential out of this, I have to bring that, and then you've just got a whole nother computer.
Yeah,
usually.
You look at like the marketing messages right behind the new console launches, and it's 4K. We're gonna have ray tracing. Yeah. We have like SSDs now inside of them, right? If you're a PC gamer, this is all old news. You've been playing at 4K and high frame rates and experiencing ray tracing now for a long time, right? And so that's a big part of it, is if gaming is your passion and you want to experience it on the highest level, like in reality, like PC is the way to do that sooner and better, right? And I think that's one of the key advantages behind gaming on the PC is, especially like all of us here, right? We're passionate about tech. We're passionate about being ahead of the curve with this technology. And so PC is the way to experience that in gaming, VR, like the list goes on of what comes out first on the PC.
Yeah, VR is interesting. So we have the Oculus Quest 2 here. So this new, I guess you could call it a gaming console, right? It's its own system, basically. It has its own store of apps, its own storage. It's a standalone unit. And in a way, I feel like I don't know if you've played with the Quest 1, but that was one of my favorite pieces of tech from last year. And that feels like a really forward-thinking, bleeding-edge gaming experience. What do you guys think of VR? I know you can plug in a Quest to a PC and use it as a headset, but do you guys have strong thoughts about VR and how it relates to gaming?
Yeah. So it's funny because I just received my my headset from Valve, right?
Oh yeah. So we haven't gotten to try that at all. The Valve Index, right?
The Index, yeah. I actually got it a while back, and I just recently set it up, right? But just the controls and it's just incredible. I'm starting to play Alex now, right?
Okay.
And the experience is just so different than what you get by using a keyboard or mouse and sitting in front of a screen, or even sitting in front of a console, in your living room. That I almost see like, kind of full circle. It's like it's not about what platform is best. It's just about gaming, right? So like I feel like an Xbox is an extension of a PC for me. Like I almost feel like I should have an Xbox, even though I'm a PC gamer, right? And then if you're a gamer, you should probably try VR because it's that cool. The experience is that different. So and it's the same thing with like a Switch, right? Like a Switch, if you look at it from a technological standpoint, it's kind of old, right? Like it's low resolution.
Purely like spec wise, yeah, exactly.
720p screen. But who cares? It's about the fun factor. It's about being able to connect with your friends and play and sit down on the table here and kind of just have fun.
Some of my favorite experiences I've had over the last couple of years have been on my Switch as well. So you're totally right. Like, it's not limited by tech. And you brought up Half-Life Alyx. Like, that to me is the kind of like the thing that shows what VR can do in gaming and what I'm excited about for the future. Like, that game is only made possible by VR. Like, the experience that you have is amazing, and I'm excited to see what that kind of sets as a precedent for more VR experiences. Because like up to this point, there's been a lot of really cool stuff to do in VR. I have a Vive at home currently, and you know, especially when you have people over and like showing off.
That's the most fun to
like
me.
Yeah.
Having people over and trying it for the first time, because most people haven't tried a great proper VR experience, and having people over and trying it is always really fun.
There's also something to about it being way more intuitive than like if somebody's never played a game before and you hand them an Xbox controller, you're like, press the A button, and then they take their head down from the screen, look at the controller, find where the A button is, and then press it, and then have lost what it actually did on the screen anymore. Where VR, my mom's played it, my sister's played it, my wife's played it. They don't really play games, and they're just in and having a blast like almost instantly. And it's cool to just let anybody experience that, which is it was a fun. When I talked with Mark Zuckerberg about this, like that was what he got the most passionate about, was like putting someone in another world and like letting them actually experience what it's like to be in it. So there's a game, I haven't played the Half-Life game, but there's a game called Echo VR where you're like sort of floating around another planet, kind of playing this sport where you're like throwing yourself through space and grabbing a ring and scoring in a goal. And once you get the mechanics of that, you're not really thinking about playing. You're just in this other world playing. You totally have lost that you're in your living room between two couches and you think you're in this other world. I guess that leads to maybe a more difficult question for you guys, but I'd be curious what you think. If every time a new console comes out, people say PC games are dead, but then they aren't really, when would PC gaming actually be in danger? Or is it a forever thing? Because we have new form factors. We have the Switch now. We have VR games. Is PC gaming a forever thing?
Yeah. So I've had this conversation, especially from a business survival standpoint, multiple times, right? Specifically, I was never concerned about a new console generation dropping and potentially, jeopardizing our business. I was concerned at one point when PC game streaming was the big talking point, right?
Okay.
So this is when on its early stages we're like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen if nobody needs to purchase a PC again, right? Like, what do we do, right? Mm-hmm. Do we sell just workstations? Like, how do we feed our families essentially, right? Because we're, as you guys know, we're making these really beautiful bespoke PCs. They're almost like art pieces in some ways, and the conversation completely switched to who cares, because it's all about latency, right? And when you experience PC gaming is all about obviously the quality experience that you get, the visual quality experience, right? But it's also about the feel, the latency, right? So the latency of a really fast keyboard and mouse, the latency now that NVIDIA is marketing really well, that I believe companies like Intel and AMD are going to start to market even more now. It's not just frames per second. It's how fast you can, just the competitiveness of the experience. So, from a network infrastructure in the US at least, I don't think it's there yet for at least another 5 years.
I agree. I was gonna say I was asking, like, how good is that really? The best remote I don't even know what to call it. It feels like a remote PC is the best way to explain it. But how good is the very best remote PC experience versus having the hardware yourself? It's not that good yet, right?
Well, it's
impressive that it works.
Look, it might be good enough for certain people, right? And it goes back to what we were saying before. If it's good enough for you to have fun, sure, then it's good enough, right? Yeah. Like I strongly believe there's a reason why like Stadia is not the hot thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I bought the Stadia Founders Edition. I was like, oh my god, this is gonna, I hope they don't do some crazy magical stuff that removes latency all of a sudden. But I'm like, okay, look, does it suck? No, it doesn't. Like I used it at home. I actually hardwired it to my to my network infrastructure at home, my router, whatever, and it worked great. Okay, but then you go and use a PC, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
This is way better.
Yeah, that's like what I've said that a million times. I never got that excited about Stadia because I just didn't think it was. I think my perspective on all this is almost every game I play is very competitive. At least I just get extremely competitive with it. And like, to me, I just haven't found, I mean, I used to play Call of Duty on Xbox and stuff, but once you get onto a computer and you're now at a higher frame rate, everything's like zero latency, anything. And there's just always like a far broader competitive like audience on PC, just always in every game you play, I feel like. So and then even when you take that another step into like esports, where as much as none of us are going to be esports players, like esports are selling these games as well. So like the bigger esports are always going to be on PC and almost never on console, unless you're talking like maybe some fighting games or like Smash and Tekken and stuff like that.
It's funny you mention that because I know I'm thinking of like competitive gaming, and I'm obviously not a hugely competitive gamer, so I'm skewed on this, right? But the game I play the most is NBA 2K, and there's a whole mode where you can like go to the park and play with your friends and play against other groups of friends, and that it's always full. There's always tons of people there, and the number one thing everyone's always complaining about is how much lag there is and how much latency there is, and this guy's glitching again, and like how far behind some actions are to when you press the controller. But people are always there, so I think it's like it's a different group of people that don't care about the latency and on the competitive edge of having the smallest delay, and then will just play the game they like, versus like the games that are tailored to like, you have the best reaction time, therefore you should probably pay on a PC.
Yeah, but in terms of like a marketing standpoint for some of these games, you see stuff, well, like esports is going to sell because it's just bringing more attention to the game when there's a big, I mean, when I used to play League of Legends, I went to Madison Square Garden, which was sold out to watch the like NA finals of of League of Legends. It was wild. It was so much fun. But then you even think about all the top streamers right now are all playing on PC also. So like the people who are bringing games to the like general audience are almost all on PC, which means those game titles are going to have the hype like all the time.
And what we see happen a lot actually is it's almost like with competitive games, we'll give like Fortnite as like a really good example, even though you can't download it on an iPhone right now. But if you look at it, like it's almost like a gateway into getting to those higher levels of performance, right? So you start because you have a phone, so you play Fortnite on your phone, right? And then you want that better experience. You want to compete at the level that you're seeing your favorite Twitch streamer stream at, or content creator, or you just want to be better at the game, right? And so when you're talking about streaming, like the definition of what good is has changed. So like when it comes to competitive titles, good is not 60 frames a second. Good isn't even 120 frames a second, because you get a competitive advantage as you get the higher frame rates, right? So that target is growing. And so there's different parts of the conversation. It's, there's single player titles where it's a little different, right? But there's still advantages to it. But in the competitive space, that bar just keeps going up. I mean, there's 320 hertz displays that are going to be coming out, right? Like,
yeah. What is the, maybe you guys are the best to ask. What is the, I'm not a PC gamer full time yet. I still play more on the console. So if I theoretically were to get into some games that would really take advantage of high frame rates, what is the point of what is it called? Limited return? Diminishing. What is the point of diminishing return for that setup? I'm sure you guys have like 240 hertz monitors at home and like the sweetest setups possible. Where would I start with that?
So for you or for the average listener?
Oh, good question. Let's pretend I have a budget of like, it's not even the budget. It's just like, where should I just stop going crazy, obsessing over frame rates? I probably don't need a 320 hertz monitor.
So what's the point of all of this, right? Like, why do you play basketball? Why do you play a sport? And it's because of the competition aspect, right?
So how
like,
good do I want to get?
Yeah. So
how good do I really want to play?
Right. So it's really what you can afford, and how much you want to beat your friends, right? You want to you want to have the best gear to be to have the edge over your buddy. So but to answer that question about what's like the sweet spot, I would say like for monitors, it's around like 240 hertz right now. I wouldn't necessarily plow down for a 340 hertz screen because it's very hard to differentiate between 240 and 340, right?
I was gonna ask, do you think you could tell?
Yeah.
You could tell
between
340 and 240.
Oh, like hold on, me playing a game. No, if you were to, I can't, right? Okay. But I can tell between 120 and 240.
Okay.
And I can definitely tell between 60 and 120.
Same.
Right.
I think there's a step to being able to tell the difference between that, and I think the higher the frame rate or even just like the limit you're pushing goes, it makes it harder and harder to see that jump. So like if I was only playing on 60 hertz and then you put 144 hertz and a 240 hertz in front of me, I probably wouldn't be able to see the difference because I haven't gotten used to one of them yet.
Right.
If you're playing one game for a year on 144 hertz and then you play that same game on a 240 hertz, you're probably going to notice the difference because you've gotten so dialed into something.
Right.
Just like when you're playing Ultimate and you get a new pair of cleats, like
that's what I was gonna
you've gotten so used to it. We in Ultimate, we're so picky about the type of Frisbee that we use. Like we use a Discraft. If someone put a Whammo in our hands, you wouldn't even look at it and you just say, this feels completely off.
That's a perfect example. I always relate it back to sports because that's what I think really well. And it's like, if you're a beginner, like I would be with PC gaming, then you probably won't notice as much the differences between the higher frame rates or whatever. But if you're super into it and super calibrated because you have a lot of hours in, then you'll notice the small differences. So for me, like you say, the disc, like if you hand a beginner an Aria disc or a Discraft disc or whatever and tell them to throw, it probably won't matter because they're still learning to throw. But yeah, I think when you bring that back to PC gaming, it's like you could probably start with a 120 hertz, 240 hertz monitor. You start with getting those frame rates and just learning the game in the first place. Then once you've learned the game, then you can spend the money on what you think will actually make you better.
So it's interesting. So like NVIDIA actually did some stuff around this, right? Where they got a bunch of people together that varied in skill set and then had them play a game on different refresh rates and saw what their accuracy was. So a lot of what we're talking about right now is noticing it, right? But there's the not noticing it. There's the I'm just better at the game now because I'm playing at a higher refresh rate.
Interesting.
And that's what they actually found and the people who had the least skill set, I believe, had the greatest improvement by going up because their skill ceiling was lower. And so they got a pro is able to adjust more to different environments. It impacted them pretty dramatically, but they have more muscle memory, so they're able to compensate for like a handicap, right? But a person who wasn't as skilled actually saw a greater increase in accuracy from the higher refresh rates. So it's like, it's not just about perception, it's about like actual results in a title like that.
Yeah. I'm sure there's like, I was also thinking about golf because in golf, there's like, again, if you're a super beginner, I could give you pretty much any type of golf club and you'd get the same wild variety of results. But if you hand a Tour Pro like like two different irons, but one of them has a little bit lower center of gravity, and they notice the one with the lower center of gravity has more spin and they start hitting it higher, they'll adjust their swing around it and they can make that work for them. But that adjustment only happens when you notice what's going on. If you don't notice what's going on and you make the same swing over and over, you're going to subconsciously get a better shot with the lower CG iron despite you not adjusting. So the equipment, I think that's kind of like when tech is at its best. It's when it's like unnoticeable like magic. It just works for you. You don't think about it too much and it just makes you better or have more fun.
That's actually funny because that's how, to completely turn this into a different subject now, this is exactly what we were talking about when we were talking about 8K gaming and how, okay, it's a crazy resolution. What's the point of this? But there's one thing about games when you get super high quality and like ultra realism that it's not that something looks bad that takes you out. It's that something just looks off and all of a sudden you're completely out of this immersion. So in 8K and with like ray tracing, when we were looking at that game Control, I think it was, that had all the crazy real-time rendering reflections and lighting effects and stuff like that. Those are just all little things that when you're walking through the world, it's just like, oh, everything looks normal. But if it wasn't doing that correctly, or if it was a little off because of maybe a GPU that couldn't power it, or just lower graphic settings or lower resolution, then you would start feeling less immersed. So 8K is beautiful, but it's also just bringing you all these things that you're subconsciously just realizing aren't a problem, which is weird to think
Just
like,
part
I'm
of the
going to
puzzle.
spend all this extra money for it to look more normal. But
It's about the immersion, right? So
Mhm.
like certain games you don't want to play in 8K because you want more than 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
Right. But like, I'm not gonna say Flight Sim is a bad example because we haven't tried that game.
Control is like probably the prime example
Yeah.
of like a beautifully crafted like piece of art as far as the game goes.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you're hitting 60 or 140 at that point because it's just about the experience that you're having.
Being
right?
in the world, yeah.
Yeah. So but for example, like Flight Sim, they're talking about like how it's crushing GPUs, and it doesn't matter because you don't need 200 frames per second in that game for you to have a great time. Right.
Yeah, as long as you're like over 30 in Flight Simulator,
Right.
like that's what you need to enjoy. And like obviously you're flying slow, you're like the game is different, and so it's
Simulator
you need
games
to be
are.
different.
I used to play a lot more simulator games actually, which is kind of funny. There's a truck simulator game I used to play a long time ago, which is like, I can't drive, I'm a kid, but here in this game I can drive and I can drive around the streets and stay in my lane and all that stuff. But like, yeah, in those games you're looking around at like the inside of the cabin and the textures on the road, and it feels more realistic when you get more information. So I'm not looking for 240 hertz there. I'm looking for detail. So that's one of those games that I think falls in the benefits more from resolution category, which is fun. But I want to turn the conversation a little bit on you guys. So what other tech do you get into after the gaming world? You get home from work, you want to get back into tech. What kind of stuff does that bleed into? Are you smartphone guys? Are you electric car guys? What kind of comes out of that?
So we've had first of all, I've just converted Ron to an iPhone, so I just want to congratulate him
From
on
what?
graduating from Android.
Okay.
brief phone history. I had all the iPhones up to the 4. Then I left for Android.
What made you leave?
When the 4S got announced and it wasn't bigger, and I was looking at all these big Android phones, and that's what I wanted, and I was disappointed. And then multiple Android phones, like big OnePlus fan, big Pixel series fans, and then the Pixel 3 was kind of the nail in the coffin for me. I don't want like Samsung bloatware. It bugs me. It just annoys me.
Yeah.
I just personally can't deal with it. Right.
At my core.
Yeah. It's just like,
I can't stand it.
I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I wanted a flagship phone, and I didn't feel like I could get the vanilla Google experience at the time, and like true vanilla Google experience in a flagship.
Yeah.
And so it was full Apple ecosystem switch to AirPods, Apple Watch.
Oh man, this
Pro,
guy's so
11
great
Pro
now.
Max, like,
that is a hard pivot.
Yeah, in one go. And Apple Watch was part of the reason too, because Google's wearables are
It's true.
just not there.
I'm kind of actually in the same place. Not that I'm going to do this massive pivot, but like I really like the simple, clean Android experience. And every time I use a Samsung phone, I just keep trying to use the Note 20 Ultra. I'm like, I love this screen. I love this hardware, this battery, these cameras. They're so good. And then I open the 2 different clock apps, and I'm like, why is this calendar so ugly? What is going on with this software? So I've been a big fan of like the Pixels and Nexuses before them. But yeah, they're just not really the flagships that I want them to be. And as we all know, Pixel 5, maybe you don't all know, but it's not probably going to be the highest end bleeding edge
I think
flagship.
it's rumored to be like a $700 like
yeah,
mid-range.
765G, like a mid-range spec, and they just focus on the software, which is cool. For most people, that's great.
Right.
But for me, I'm like, wow, I really wanted like the Note 20 Google Play Edition. You guys remember Google Play Edition?
Oh,
I was going to
that.
say that. Like, I just wish there was a Google Play Edition for Samsung phones because the hardware is so beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just a beautiful screen. Like, it's just perfect. And then the software is just,
I get sad every time I think about Google Play Edition and how that stopped happening. I wish I could have done something to save it.
Maybe let's start like a campaign.
Start a petition?
Petition.
I would. Let's do it. I'm in. We got a signature already. What about you? What kind of phone? You got a phone stuff?
Yeah, so I'm using an iPhone, right? I just purchased the Dual, the Surface Dual. That was my yeah. For me, I'm like, you know what? I think Microsoft's gonna do it. They're gonna strip all the extra stuff. I'm gonna, I'm in the Microsoft ecosystem now with Office 365, et cetera, because of work. So I said, you know what? This is gonna be it. And I don't care about the specs specifically on that phone. I just care about the output of what I can do with it, right?
Yeah.
The dual screens, it's gonna be cool. So I was a little bit disappointed.
Yep.
Yep. The hardware was so nice, even though there's just big chins all over the place, right? It was beautiful, like the way it closes, the way it sounds. I didn't care about the camera not being awesome. I didn't care about the processor not being the latest and greatest from this year. I just wish they had really nailed the software part down. And it's not there yet, but I'm looking forward to the second version.
Yeah. So when you bought it, were you buying it as this is going to be your one phone, or is this now like a work phone almost?
I was hoping it was going to be my only phone.
Okay.
But I was expecting it to be my work phone.
Okay. Because we talk a lot about how it's kind of potentially being like the new BlackBerry, as like this isn't your main phone, but it does so many good productivity things that people will be carrying it on weekdays kind of things, and then probably not touch it as much at nights or on the weekends, and then have your iPhone, have your OnePlus.
What you said though, so is like very close to like my review, my feelings about it. Like, there's a couple things they can do with Surface Duo 2 that if they really nail those things, I'm going to be really into that device. Because like you said, they nailed the hardware. It's awesome. It's beautiful. You close it. It's, the full 360 hinge. The hinge is amazing. And even a lot of what Panos was talking about with like the dual screen experience, where once you get used to it, it's kind of hard to go back. A lot of what he said is true. It's just the software actual execution is a little buggy sometimes, a little stuttery, like not great. And that makes it hard to get in that flow with it. And I think if they stick with it, I hope they do. And the second one has, higher end specs, a little bigger battery, maybe high refresh rate. They can do a lot of things with software to make it more fluid and more in the flow. And I think that would be awesome.
I think the only thing that's like a bummer with this kind of stuff is like they are still stuck with like what development from third-party app people will happen, right?
Very.
And that's the Android issue, right? Is that there's so many different form factors. Unless it gets wild adoption, like the Microsoft stuff will get there and work really well, but like the other apps that you depend on,
Twitter, Instagram,
are not necessarily going to take advantage of it, right? And so like that's the thing that I think is the biggest challenge that they have with it.
It started for me just from the sign up. Like I was trying to sign up when I first turned it on to sign up with my Office 365 work account. That was my whole goal. It wouldn't accept it. So it made me sign up with my personal live account. Then it made me sign up with my Google account. And then I had to individually sign up with my Office 365 work account and everything else. So it was really confusing. I'm just like, wow, man, I wish it was almost there. Yeah. But I'm sure they'll be there in the second version.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people think foldables as a category are going to be stuck in this like spinning the wheels state until Apple makes one. Because if anyone can get adoption of a new form factor and get app developers on track to actually make new things for this stuff, it's a new folding iPhone, right? And so that's been like the question is, will foldables ever really take off without Apple jumping in? And if Apple finally does jump in, is that the inflection point where now this is the future of the, or not even the future, is this a new form factor we all suddenly want? That's about all I had to say about that. I just don't know when they're going to make one or if they're going to jump in, but we'll find out. We'll see.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Another thing you guys mentioned was, well, this is another segue I was going to make a while ago, but you talked about NVIDIA wouldn't really hold back a card or a new development if they thought they could just sell it now and, maybe some other announcement comes out and then it's a good time to drop it. They're not really necessarily waiting. But something that made me think of was Tesla and the Plaid Model S announcement. And I didn't think about this too much, but if you haven't seen, Tesla announced the Plaid Model S, which is a triple motor Model S with a 0 to 60 in sub 2 seconds, allegedly 520 mile range, 200 mile an hour top speed, all this crazy stuff, sub 9-second quarter mile. But it conveniently was announced at Battery Day right after Lucid Air announced their 4-door luxury $150,000 sedan, which had a 517-mile range and a slightly faster 0 to 60 than the old Model S. So people are thinking like, oh yeah, Tesla conveniently right after Lucid's announcement announced that they're going to one-up them with their Plaid Model S. I just thought that was fascinating. But do you guys think about electric cars at all, or are in that world?
I pre-ordered mine. Like instantly, yeah.
Plaid Model S?
It's the first Tesla that I think I'm gonna purchase. I'm a big car guy, first of all. So like we drove in an M5 competition edition. Like nice. I've been racing pretty much since I was 16 years old. Because I'm a car guy, it's not just the performance, it's the full picture here, right? I need the handling, I need the interior to be good, I need everything to kind of like, if there's panel gaps in my car, like it's, I'm the guy that buys a brand new car and takes it to a detailer to actually do a paint correction and ceramic coating. And
so our Tesla's a nightmare then.
Or worrisome at least.
It would really bother the crap out of me if I bought a brand new P100.
Yeah.
And there's like crazy panel gaps all over the place.
My car has panel gaps.
Yeah, see.
It
would drive me nuts.
It's I love this world. I'm glad so I always think like, okay, there's two types of people buying this car. One, people who just like think it's a great car, fun to drive. You're going to launch it and you're going to floor it and your guts are going to go in the back of your spine and you're going to be like, this is the greatest thing ever. Or there's people who are like, interesting, okay, I have a choice between a couple other $90,000 sedans, and maybe I'll consider this one. And then they sit in a Porsche, BMW, and they're like, never mind, this isn't the same thing. I don't want a Tesla. It's nowhere near what I want. And I've always been firmly in camp 1, trying to understand camp 2.
There's, and as I'm getting older, I really don't care about the 0 to 60 or the quarter mile. I care about the full experience.
Your like everyday experience.
Well, that's all Plaid Model S is really going to be,
right? So that's the funny part, right? So I read the specs on the Plaid, and I'm like, oh my god, like sub 9 seconds. I'm gonna buy this car and I'm gonna rip all my friends apart when I race on a quarter mile. So it'll probably be like my daily driver. And I'm looking forward to that one. And I'm gonna be okay with the panel gaps if I have 1100 horsepower.
That's does it overpower the panel gaps and paint correction that you have to do if you're like burning up 9.8 seconds?
I think so.
8.8 seconds.
I mean, there's so many questions. I mean, because like being that I used to drag race a lot, like the tire can spin on the rim. Do you guys realize that can happen on something with 1100 horsepower? Like, is Tesla gonna beadlock the tires and the wheels to make that work and make it safe? Like there's so many questions in my mind right now about that car that I'm like, I gotta pre-order it and I gotta get it because it's gonna be like the biggest death trap ever, or it's gonna be like the greatest thing ever.
That's actually one of the first things I thought when I saw the Roadster 2 that they're gonna do with the SpaceX package. Yeah. I'm like, you're gonna sell this to real people? Have you seen people drive in New Jersey? Like this, that's a questionable
I cannot
move.
Imagine the Parkway with the roadsters on it.
That's going to be
roadsters,
so they're going to have this crazy spec in the hands of regular. Maybe when you guys get it, I'll have to come by and give it a test drive because I know I'm teetering. I really want to. I want to pull the trigger. I know I want to wait till Roadster, but also, come on. 0 to 60 and 1.9. It's ridiculous.
And I just had a baby, so like I need that back seat. That Roadster is just too gorgeous, and no back seat on that one. But I think that's gonna be my first test. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
That's a fun first one.
Yeah. Do you care about autopilot at all? Because I know I like driving, and so I have autopilot, and I very rarely use it. It's mostly let me just let it hold the lane for a minute while I grab something from my backpack next to me type of thing.
So I do, and I use it every day in my BMW. It's not full autopilot. We don't have the full feature set from what Tesla has, but it has like a lane assist and it decelerates the car, etc. And I use that in traffic every day. So it's like, and not that I'm like on my phone or anything like that. But I actually do use that. I think it makes just the commute a little bit easier, and I think I'll definitely use autopilot.
Definitely. All right, we've chatted for a little bit. Let's take a quick break here. We'll come back. We'll dive into the weeds podcast style on the new 30 series. I've been calling it the 3000 series, but it's the 30 series for sure. Be right back. This episode of Waveform is brought to you by ExpressVPN. It's a real bummer